back to the Impact Effect podcast. I've got an amazing guest today. Virgil Herring is in the house, and man, we are going to go through some things. This is going to be a good talk because not only have I known Virgil for over a year now, but I've seen just so much growth and so much someone who takes action and grabs onto opportunity. So hopefully we'll dive into that. But as you know, the first question that we always start with is, Virgil, how do you define the word impact, and how do you show up in the world and create impact today?
Well, I live in a world, a sports world, golf, where impact is a fundamental of the game, okay? So that is a collision between the golf club and the golf ball, which could be synonymous with your collision in life with the world, right?
I like it.
And And the ballistics, the quality of the ballistics, the quality of the impact dictates the quality of your outcome. So the process that you use to create the best impact, the mindset required to move in and out of states, because golf is a slow moving, on again, off again, on again, off again endeavor. You learn that some impacts are more powerful than others, but not count more than others.
Oof.
Like a 350-yard drive equals a 3-foot putt. They're all one. But one looks way more impressive than the other, but one wins. Right? So at the end of the day, I try not to get too involved in the weight of impact, as in WEIGHT.
Yep.
I'm more into whatever I'm asked of myself to do to deliver it with the most effectiveness.
First sports analogy, and man, does that create an impact in my world. I never looked at it that way from the collision side, right? Like, my perspective on impact has always been, in my early years of life, it was a negative word for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then transitioning it into a positive word, putting it in my company name, speaking around the term. But I never looked at it from that angle of that output.
Mm.
How did you come about that? Like, how did you nail down this golf to that science, but have it so much more deeper around mindset and all those logistics?
Well, I think at every talent level, the person with the strongest mind wins, all talent being given. So essentially, you guys on TV, take Tiger Woods out of it, right? Most of the guys on TV are essentially the same quality, physical gifts. The guy who wins is the guy who has the strongest mind to handle the adversity that the game inevitably brings to you, okay? And that ebbs and flows week to week, because the greatest golfer we've ever seen has only won 22% of the time. Right? So even Tiger,
say that one more time.
Yes.
Say that one more time, because that can translate to a lot of different things in life.
So the GOAT, Tiger Woods, the player who's played the game better than anybody's ever played it, has won 22% of the time.
Wow.
So essentially 1 time in 5, he wins. And yet we put him on a mental pedestal that he won almost every time.
That perception, yeah.
Yeah, but then what does that mean? Like, his impact on the game, his impact on how it was played, alters the reality of how you see him, even though he won 22% of the time. That is like 12% more than Jack Nicklaus, so twice as effective, essentially, over time. And you're like, wow, this guy was massively impactful. And then what does that mean? Impactful business-wise, impact on the social side of it, impact on the sport, impact on the finances. His impact was massive. But if you look at it through the lens of success, he was a 1 in 5 victory. Now, in his prime, it was like 40%. In the Super Tiger era, it was like 42%, which is literally absurd. But over the grand scheme of things, most people would say he's been in his prime for a long time. It's 22%.
Wow.
So you have to take into consideration, okay, so if the greatest of all time fails 4 in 5, I'm not the greatest of all time. So your victories are at different levels, and at less frequency than that.
Of course.
So you have to be resilient to this fake thing called failure, which is if you judge your life on victories and losses only, it's a pretty lonely, empty, and painful world. But if you looked at it from the fact that when I didn't play well, I learned something that's going to help me play better another day. And it's like the strongest or the most important shot is not calling your shot, but to be able to recall your shot. Mm-hmm. If you've had positive experiences before, you can remember everything that you did. And because visualization is a massively powerful tool for everything, but certainly in my sport, you have to do a lot of things before the play to be elite.
True.
And that's
work before the work, the preparation.
Yeah. And that's no different in life, which is why golf and life often get compared a lot, because life is long, golf takes long, much longer than almost every sport.
Yeah.
So there's way more mental, plus there's no reaction. You're not trying to run from somebody. You're not trying to hit a moving ball.
Yeah.
Right. It's a responsive sport, not a reactive sport. So there's a lot more mental in my game than it is football, baseball, basketball, hockey, because they're moving and moving fast. And when you're moving fast, that kind of shuts off the prefrontal cortex and throws the right side of the brain into control. And that's why it's easier to find yourself in better performance states in reactionary sports. It's because it makes the brain have to do that.
It's funny. I always say, and I think this compares to what exactly you're talking about. I always say, like, you're running a race against yourself in life, right? It's you against you. Yeah. It's your mind against what you think and how you perceive it, how you move through it. You talked about Tiger Woods and that level of success, but I also think, just to stay on Tiger for 1 second, he's had a lot of negative impact, right? So you can win 22% of the time, 40%, as you mentioned, in his prime period or era, but what is the negative impact and the connotation that's now related to his brand and people talking and observing and saying, man, do I want Tiger to be on the posters and on the walls of my children, especially those aspiring to be golfers? Because, yes, he had a great impact in the game and the talent, but look at the negative impact on society. And if you define success, my question to you is, would you say that, what's your definition of success, and would you put Tiger in that modality of how you define success?
So I think that I view it like this. Tiger had the opportunity at the most visible level to have succeeded and failed at such an epic level that it gave him an opportunity to resurrect himself. And then when he did, it was a story that America's basically built on.
Yeah.
Which is, we love to elevate our stars. We love to poke holes in them to humanize them. And then we love to watch them rise again like a phoenix.
Yep.
So we
love the comeback.
We love the comeback. So we love the fact that in 2019, after literally 10 years, literally the 10 greatest years of, I could argue, in anybody's sports career, followed by the 10 most humiliating, devastating, negative, to come all the way back and win at the grandest stage again, and now being a mentor and a spokesperson for the tour, and all the best players look up to him, and he's embraced this role of, he's no longer the gladiator, he's the sensei, so to speak, that, it has to be deemed a success, because he shifted from failures that, what he did in his life is happening somewhere in your neighborhood here.
Of course, 100%.
But 7 people watch. When he was doing it, like 5 million, maybe 5 billion people knew about it. It's a very different lens to have your human error show up in everybody's feed.
Yeah.
So I give him grace because, he's a human, and he's made massive mistakes like everybody else, except that over half the world saw his and like 9 people saw mine.
Yeah.
So and to be able to come back with the dignity that he has is remarkable. Now, I will say that I wish that if there's ever been somebody who could have made possibly a massive impact on the opiate crisis, the opiate situation, from all the nerve pain and back pain and leg pain that he's had,
Yeah.
he had the chance to to make a stand for literally millions of people that can't defend themselves against opiate addiction, to help. And he denied that it was an issue. So therein lies, that's not my business to force him to take a stand on something that big. But man, he could have really done some good there. And probably at some point, he may be doing something behind the scenes that nobody knows about, which maybe needs to go on, and I'll give him all the credit in the world, because he's also doing a ton of that to his foundation. I don't know about opiates, but I know he's helping underprivileged kids a ton.
Yeah.
So there's another part that we don't get a chance to see about Tiger, is all the great work that he's doing in the world through his foundation that's not nearly as cool to talk about in the headlines as some majestic victory. But at the end of the day, he is a role model for resiliency, perseverance, overcoming pain, and he's also a poster child for when you get to the top and you don't have anybody on your team that says no, and all you have are yes people, you can find yourself in a pretty disastrous state too.
Yeah. I think that's a big lesson that I think we can all just take a second and think back in our own lives of, as we've climbed or as we've had massive growth or expansion, who's been around and who's been in the corner and who hasn't. And, you know, as I get older and I collaborate and partner with more people, I seek those types of folks that say, hey, dude, what the fuck was that?
Yeah.
Like, that's not you. What's going on? What's off or that? Or, you know, you're thinking about doing that and affiliating with that brand? Whoa, dude, right? Like, I need those people, not, oh, yeah, let's go grab that check or grab that, you know, opportunity with someone who may not be the best for my personal growth, someone I shouldn't have in my circle, right?
Yeah.
Because we are who we're around. You said something about resiliency and things like that. Talk to me a little bit about some experiences you've had, whether in golf or your personal life, around resiliency, because I think we've all been there, and it's all shown up in our world different ways. You know, Tiger obviously being on the forefront, you know, is one piece of it, you know, the opioid and the opiate addiction and all that. But is there anything that you've really kind of had to navigate and be resilient around?
Well, my profession is a pretty unique profession, right? Because there's a governance body called the PGA, right? And there's some, you know, any governmental organization do not really have a bunch of entrepreneur, like, unique thought leaders. They're more in a, you know, they follow the book, right? Well, you know me, baby, I ain't following too much of a book, right? I don't subscribe to a lot of the old models, right?
Yep.
So a lot of my jobs I've worked at for 5 years, and by year 3, it was the greatest run that whatever facility I was at had ever had. But the more successful you get, the more they want from you. And then when the game changes from doing something great to making money, then that's ended all of my jobs at year 5, every one of them.
Really?
Yeah. So now I just know that I need a 4-year contract if I'm going to do something. It takes 3 years to take something, because it looked like I was the golf coach in Ensworth. And when I took over, there were 1,098th in the country. And by year 2, we were number 3 in the country. We stayed number 3 in the country until my last year. And in my last year, for a variety of factors, they just said, we're going to go in a different direction. And I know that finances played a role in it, because, you know, as a school that's nonprofit, it doesn't look real good when 4 of your 5 highest paid employees are coaching. Right? So I get that. So there was a lot of moving parts to it. But at the end of the day, after we won the state championship for the first time, that was the pinnacle. That was the whole point of building this gigantic program. And we had a big machine. And then it's like the whole thing changed from that was what it was about to it was about something else.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was at multiple jobs where, yeah, go do it, go get it, go. Well, hey, you're making too much. Yeah. Well, hey, So everything changes over time
I've
because
been in that situation.
so when people are watching, I still can't wrap my head around the fact that when you're succeeding, and not only are you succeeding, but you're helping others succeed, the only thing people look at is what you're making.
Yeah.
And they don't, like, nobody's rooting for you. When you start ascending, I tell people all the time, there are more feet on your head the closer you get to the top, and way less hands reaching down to pick you up.
Oh, yeah.
And I've found, and that's why now I'm the most non-conforming PGA professional. I don't work at a golf course. I don't work at a golf club. I teach out of my home in a studio that's really nice, and people come to see me, and then I don't have to pay anybody any rent.
Yeah.
Right? I'm paying myself. And so to have your feelings hurt and because you in a job, these people, you're spending just as much time or more than your family.
Of course.
So as you're ascending and making things better, and then the relationship turns, it's almost like you lose parts of your life every 5 years. And when I was young, I took that personal. And one of my job losses was a guy who was really not a good person at all. They brought him in from Florida, and he came in. He was not a good person at all. But he told me something I'll never forget. He goes, Virgil, you're making this personal. This is business.
Yep.
And when you're a coach and you're trying to spend your entire life elevating people to be the best version of themselves because they're asking you, because your track record is building champion golfers, they're asking you I want to be part of that.
Yeah.
You're invested in that.
You're the lifeline to get them to that point, and that's a commitment you make, that's a commitment they make, and now off you go, and the goal is this, and we're going to get to that goal, and your track record is we're going to get to that goal.
And then when there's a divorce, when there's an end,
Yep.
right, it's not business. It's business and relationship. And that's the downside of being a coach, is you pour all this love, care, and energy and like support, and then when it ends, like any other ending of a personal nature, it kind of guts you.
Yeah.
And you have 4 of those over a 20-year time span, 4 businesses in which that occurs. The last one I didn't take personal. And it was easier for me to just go to the next thing.
But what you did do is you realized the pattern. You realized what wasn't in alignment or congruent with how you want to be, how you want to feel, and you made a decision to say, okay, let me take this thing inward, disrupt the norm, and build it how I want to build it so I can feel aligned, have some level of safety, some level of control, right? I mean, that's
100%.
entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And it, in a lot of cases for a lot of people, and as you're saying this, I'm like, yep, this all makes sense. I've never looked at it from that lens because I've always taken it personal in the corporate world. Yeah. And I've always said, wow, like, what did I do wrong? And I look inward, but I think in some cases, that's a big reason why I didn't want to go back to that, because those relationships and those bonds, when you're building something great and you're going for championship or you're going for number one, I mean, you're spending that time, and that is family.
Yeah. And
then when you separate and lose those relationships, yeah, okay, you go make money. You're a champion. You go make money. You've got a skill set. You're solving problems, massive problems, but you lose that piece. Yeah. And I think that's a tough thing that people don't actually can talk about, or people don't actually recognize. And I think you just bringing this topic up has me thinking back of, wow, yeah, there's several people in my life that I've lost through business transition, change, or growth, and that hurt.
It's it oftentimes radically unexpected, which makes it even a bigger loss.
Yeah, because you're not prepared and you don't have a plan, and then it affects you in all different ways.
And I think there are 2 different mindsets. There's that entrepreneurial mindset that you're trying to be the best that you can be. And then there are people that fall in under, worker bees. They have no problem doing the work to elevate that person who's trying to be the best.
Yeah.
But if you're somebody that's trying to be the best, who gets brought in by somebody who's acting as the best at the time, and they start to feel your pressure rise up. I have been in many situations where I embrace that person because that greatness elevates everybody. But a lot of people, they're like, uh-oh, and then they try to push you away so that they can stay on top.
It's poor leadership.
Yeah, and it's out of fear.
Yeah.
It's out of fear, and it's out of ego fear. Really.
Scarcity and ego, and wow, this person, I want to get all the handshakes and the head nods when I walk through the office, and this person's crushing sales and just did a great partnership and is expanding over different geographic markets, and I got to find a problem with that person, or now I've got to find a reason because I'm the top dog. Instead, wow, let me spend more time with that person and let's both rise.
Yeah.
It's always that leadership level of like, are you spending all the time with your associates that are failing, or you're spending your time with your associates that are crushing it so they can maximize and get even better?
100%.
And most leaders are spending time trying to lift the bottom 10% rather than spending time with the top 10 to exemplify them, to build in the 60% of revenue in potential opportunities for the entire organization.
100%
could come from that top 10%.
Yeah.
And like I always remember looking at spreadsheets and data and analyzing and like looking at the numbers of who are managing our top accounts.
Yeah.
It's like 7 or 8 people who are bringing in 62% of the revenue. But there's no training to get them better. They're the ones training the lower level people. I don't want my top 10 performers training anybody.
Yeah.
I want my top 10 performers sitting down with a consultant or a coach every week and getting better and better and better, and then a trainer below them to sit in on those meetings and create the content and the work and the SOPs to train the lower level people. Like, I don't actually want them training. Now, it's different to motivate. It's different if you're doing an SKO, sales kickoff, or a conference, right? You want your top performers there to be able to share and build a culture and community. I'm not saying exile them.
Oh, for sure.
But what I'm saying is I think so many people get it wrong, and I got it wrong for so long. I mean, I was spending so much time because I wanted that person who didn't have the skills or the mindset to get it. And then I saw top performers leaving, and I'm like, oh, I haven't had lunch with that guy in 3 months. I've had lunch with that entry-level employee 5 times in the last month. Like, I'm doing this wrong. And then I come back and spend time with those folks, and then, we're getting promoted together.
Yeah.
And I'm bringing them up with me, and then they're teaching me things too. So it's such an interesting world, and I think it really comes down to that level of leadership. Are you the person that wants to seek the goal, or are you the person that wants to be the goal?
Yeah.
And I think I always want to seek it. And if it's a goal that creates impact and positive change and, radical disruption in a new market or a new product or service to help a new segment, man, I don't care how we get there as long as it's legal and as long as my wife approves.
Yeah.
Makes
right?
Sense. And that's more of from a time and energy standpoint, not so much what that goal could be.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, at the end of the day, I would always be encouraging people to try not to live their life comparing themselves to others, and be the best version of yourself, because everybody has a God-given gift, right? Are you using it? Have you found it yet? Actually, have you found it yet? Are you using it for good?
Yep.
And are you strengthening that muscle? Because anything that God gave you and you're not using is a slap in the face to the God that gave you to you. So I don't really care that I'm not as good as Tiger Woods. I care that I'm better than I was yesterday. And I have a very clear process that I go through every day to be the best version of myself.
Yeah.
And as soon as I stopped comparing myself to others and only myself, and I did that, I was fortunate very early, maybe 26 or 27, everything changed for me. That I didn't care if I was as good as, like in my world, Butch Harmon and David Ledbetter are the 2 most famous golf teachers of all time. And I used to try to put myself in comparison to them. And I'm like, this is the stupidest thing ever, because what we do is subjective. You can't even measure what we do.
Is that point where you made that switch?
Yeah.
You realized?
Wait a second. This doesn't ever matter if I'm as good as Butch Harmon or not, because these kids right here that I've taught, they would stand on national television and say that Virgil's the best coach ever. and they've never even met Butch Harmon. And there's a bunch of people that Butch Harmon's coached that I've never met that would swear that Butch is the best. And then it just turns into a chatterbox of conjecture and opinion.
Yeah.
Because there's no way to measure, the information.
I think too, and it's one of those things where, are we satisfied with how we're showing up and how we're performing? Not because we're in comparison to say, hey, that person did 100 and I did 99. But how do you feel? Mm-hmm. Do you feel like you're growing? Do you want to grow? Are you okay not growing? Are you okay being that worker bee? Yeah. Right? Like, which is totally fine.
That is exactly right. And I want to make that clear. It's like, I'm not saying that being a worker bee is bad, but if you don't want to,
but know that you are, and say, this is me and I love it, and let's go and give it 110%.
Be the best worker bee you can be.
Exactly. And choose happiness around it, right? Like, there's several people that I've engaged into opportunities to collaborate or partner with, and we've gotten down to it. They're just like, I don't, there's a lot of pressure around this. And I'm like, totally. Like,
pressure is a privilege.
Pressure is a privilege, right? And in some cases, people don't want that, and that's okay. That's okay. I just endure honesty. Like, hey, why, right? Let's get to the why, because if I can help, if I can be a better leader, if I can support, if I can advise, if I can be a resource, if I can enterprise for you, if I can introduce you to someone, then I want to help, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It may not be on this project because there may not be that level of pressure that you can withstand, but let's talk about it. Let's get to the root.
Yeah, the synchronicity could show up later.
And one of the things I've learned, man, a lot in the last couple of years, and I don't know if you've experienced this, but like taking an idea that excites me today and saying it's not the right time, putting it on the shelf, not burying it in the trash, and coming back to it at a later time. I mean, that's what I've done with a couple programs I just released and launched, and it's been amazing. And I'm like, yeah, I almost never came back to that. Why not? Like, it just has to fit. And I think timing is everything in this world.
Yeah, sharpening the blade every day allows you to create things and then put them on a shelf, so to speak, so that as you sharpen your knife, you cut open new opportunities all the time. And then a brainstormer has ideas, and then he sees, no, this doesn't seem like there's no synchronicity right now. Like, I'm putting all this energy into it, but it's not leading me anywhere. But I know there's something to this.
Yeah.
Put it over here. And then literally 3 years later, that's kind of like manifesting. You've put the energy out there, and you're not trying to force the square peg into the round hole.
Yeah.
You're waiting for the square opening to occur. And
that can take time.
And that is what is confusing to people, is to have accomplishment equals overcoming struggle.
Yep.
Like, I try to make, everybody wants it to be easy. And I'm like, well,
what's been easy in life though?
Yeah.
Like, that's really what, like, I'm like, whenever something is easy, I'm like, okay, I'm trying to get myself in the present. And I'm like, let me acknowledge this, that like, wow, this worked pretty exactly how it was supposed to. Like, great. Mm-hmm. But knowing that 99% of stuff doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
So I can actually enjoy it and be present rather than like check off the box and keep moving.
Yeah, for sure.
And when I made that switch, that was really interesting for just my mental health. Mm-hmm. Of like, wow, this could work. Or this is, and then this is working. Mm-hmm. And then, wow, that was pretty easy. But let's not get carried away or crazy and just go run into this wall, because when we ran into this one, it's the door's open before we hit it,
Yeah, and I would say, like, I always try to create sports references, because a lot of people, whether they play sports or not, use it as a source of entertainment.
Yep.
But like in this particular model, I'd say like Mike Tyson, okay? In Mike Tyson's prime, Mike Tyson really didn't have much of a game plan. The bell's gonna ring, and I'm gonna knock your block off.
Yeah.
And don't take it personal.
Yeah.
Then I'm gonna whip you. But that when his game plan kept working 18, 22 times in a row, he stopped having adaptability built into his preparation, because he felt like he was invincible. Mm-hmm. And as soon as the adaptability went away in his training that he was just became a brawler. Like he's ding, run across the ring.
Yeah. I'm gonna get you.
Yeah, somebody found a loophole in his system, and Evander Holyfield, well, Buster Douglas, well, that was a shocker, but that was partially life-induced issues for Tyson. But
Yeah.
Evander Holyfield became the first person to crack the Tyson code, and then you started to see the chinks in the armor, and that's what in my TED talk I was just like going, the will to prepare to win is more important than the will to win, because everybody wants to win, but not everybody wants to prepare to win. But in that, one of the big keys to winning is having multi layers of game planning. Because if, like I always say, everybody's trying to win. So that means if you're going to put your best strategy forward, your opponent knows what you're really good at, and they're going to try to oppose that.
Yeah.
So now you have to predict, okay, they're going to try to stop me from doing this. So
what am I going to do now?
What am I going to do now? Now they're probably, if they're really good and they're trying to match the level of impact that I make, they've already thought about number 2. I'm thinking about 3, 4, and 5, because I want to be able to shift my game plan seamlessly, because I'm recognizing resistance that I have to move around. And when that's what we watch in every sport, really. When two titans clash, it comes down to layers of adaptability later in the game, and that's a sign of how far down the road did the leaders exercise different levels of outcomes, different strengths, new recipes to deliver a blow that nobody saw coming.
Yeah.
And that's how I view it. It's like,
well, I think
critical.
It's that vision. We talk about vision for the positive, right? Like your TED talk, I've got one coming up. I'm visioning the best outcome. I'm visioning myself on that stage, right? But what I'm also doing is visualizing I get up there and I stumble a little bit, right? Because I'm nervous and I'm looking at the crowd, or I'm preparing mentally, and well, that can't throw me off. So I'm gonna visualize that. I'm gonna say maybe I didn't have my footing the right way. Maybe I was nervous, so I mumble a little bit. What do I do in that moment? Right? Do I mumble throughout the whole thing? Or do I stop, reset, slow myself down? Right? And you know this. You're doing a TED talk not for the audience. You're doing it for the content that goes digitally on YouTube, right? So in those moments, this is actually set up to stop and reset.
Yeah.
Well, if I don't prepare a hiccup or visualize, maybe I forget something, well, then I'm just going to keep rolling through, and I'm not going to stop and say, well, let's back up, let's reset. All right, cut here, and keep moving through. And I never realized that until recently. I heard Michael Chandler talking about it and saying, like, visualizing getting knocked down rather than just visualizing me crushing Conor McGregor the whole time,
Right.
And until then, I'm like, wow, and I think that's exactly what you're talking about, that adaptability of if this happens and doesn't go at my highest level, highest performance, well, what have I prepared? And so I can mentally just move through it, and also physically, right? Not that I'm fighting anybody in the ring, but like, you got to be on the red circle physically. You can't do this. You got to have the right camera angles. So all those things matter. And yeah, you would think about getting punched in the face or knocked down or in the corner or tied up or maybe a rear naked choke. Yeah, I'm not that intense. I'm not in that battle. But the battle for the TED Talk is me showing up and sharing an idea at the highest level of clarity, and that will create impact and radical change.
Yeah, I think so. Something happened to me that I'll never forget at the TED. Right, is that I put a lot of pressure on myself to deliver a powerful speech, and I psyched myself out. I put a little too much importance.
Really?
On it. I made it bigger than it really was. And so Shane Foster's speaking before me, and I'm almost having a panic attack. That's because I've put too much pressure on myself.
Yeah.
And this hand touches me on the shoulder, and he's like, "Hey, buddy, I can tell you're a little overwhelmed at this point. I want you to remember something. The only person that knows what you're going to say tonight is you. So if you mess up, the only person that knows that you messed up is you. So just seamlessly transition as if it's just part of the speech, because everybody's watching you for the first time. You're watching yourself for the 1000th time.
Yeah.
So you might be angry because you wanted to say it this way, but they don't know that.
Yeah.
So don't react to an error or something that you wish you had done different. Just adapt seamlessly, because you've prepared for the fact that you may have forgotten exactly how you wanted to say it in the moment, but you're the only person that knows that.
And and you're still gonna get the idea out. You're still gonna get the analogy or the comparison or the quote out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it may not be perfect, but the audience is still gonna probably feel that, because that has resonance, right? And that resonance in that quote or analogy is what you're bringing in, and for people to feel that emotion and tie back to that message.
100%.
Yeah.
And that was
who was that hand?
I'm going to tell you the truth. So he wasn't backstage when I was there. And then he was backstage. He was an African American man in a gray suit and a blue tie. And after I spoke, and I know that I nailed it, I wanted to come back and thank him. And literally nobody knew who the heck I was talking about.
Dude, goosebumps moment.
I'll never forget it. I tell that story because...
Whoa, whole body goosebumps, man.
It gets me every time, because when I went back into the green room to thank him, they're like, there's no African-American guy with a gray suit. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, no, the guy who was here talked to me before I went on stage, like literally 3 minutes before I walked on. And everybody's looking at me like I'm crazy. And I'm like...
And I was in that audience. I don't remember I remember a guy with a black suit, tall, and he had a nice black suit, but not gray, no blue tie.
It was somebody. God sent that down to me. That was an angel. That was somebody looking over me. They knew how important it was to me. They knew how much I'd worked for it. And yes, I had put too much pressure on myself, but it wasn't because I was irresponsible in my preparation.
That's because you cared.
Because I cared. And it was just a little hand, like, hey,
man.
And it was...
You're getting me emotional over here. I'm tearing up.
When I think about how much that was...
Dude, that's...
Because going into that moment, I had probably been on the worst 3-year run that anybody could ask of somebody to go through. And I felt like I got the opportunity to do something that no PGA professional's ever done, which is a TED Talk, to be able to show that I am limitless. You can't pigeonhole me in as, well, Virgil's just a golf teacher.
Yeah.
And then it's the biggest public speaking stage in the world. And you know that if you deliver it right, it can have a huge impact on your life. And I'm like, I've been given this opportunity. Don't screw it up.
Yeah.
And it built up. And then the good news is
this was that divine doorway, and you knew it.
Yeah.
You knew it. You were trying to step into it, so you put that pressure on yourself.
And then when I delivered it, and then it's interesting, like, the TED fine-tooth comb of being accepted into the YouTube world.
Yep.
Mine was the next to last to come out, due to a really bizarre rule that TED uses.
So teaching you some patience maybe in this process?
And I was actually concerned that they weren't going to approve it.
I remember you were like, yeah, not yet, man, not yet. And I remember you were concerned. You were.
And then it got approved. And then in 8 days, 113,000 views. And that then led to way bigger outcomes than I anticipated, knowing that I felt like it could change my life. I just didn't think that it was going to change my life like it has. And therein lies the beauty of no expectations. Like, I didn't have an end visualization. I just knew that this could be a vessel from where I am to where I would like to be. And that's a change. And I didn't even have a destination.
Yeah.
I just knew that,
get me out of this, and what's next? I'm ready to go.
Ready. Yeah, I'm a bison walking into the storm, not a cow running away from it.
Yeah.
Right? And now, Just because I said yes and figured it out, my life has changed immensely in a positive way. And that then encourages me to take more risk and do more things that are outside the golf box.
Yeah.
Which also allows me to make an impact on other people's lives who are afraid that they're only an accountant. I'm only a banker. I'm only a salesperson. And get them to believe that, well, if a golf pro can go do this, well, I can do that too.
Yeah, of course.
And as a coach, that's my coaching mentality. I don't want to lead by talk. I want to lead because I've done it. And then after I've done it and you're interested in the journey that I took, I can talk to you through experience.
Yeah.
Not through, just like
theory.
Yeah, in theory, Goodwill Hunting. I bet you can tell me exactly what the Sistine Chapel looks like, but have you ever been there?
Have you smelled it or
Have you
something?
smelled,
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah.
Have you ever been? Have you ever smelled it?
Yeah.
So just because you can read it doesn't mean you know it.
Exactly.
And that's how I live my life.
Well, I mean, you speak and I speak. Like, you get the image or the seating chart of a stage you're going to go speak on. You go in with a plan, but I have I'm getting there early. I'm seeing they may move the tables.
Mm-hmm.
My thing I want to come off stage and end in the middle. Maybe there's a table there, which typically wasn't. Like, just that linear example of you show up to some place based on what you expect, and it's not that.
Yeah.
You've got to be prepared for that.
Mm-hmm. And when I was it was Impact Effect 23, right? So that was a unique event for me because I had not seen it from the perspective of a speaker at the highest level. I would have experienced it as a golf teacher, but I was just off my TED Talk.
Different mindset.
Right? So I had never imagined come out music. I had never imagined if I was to deliver a keynote in that stage with all the audio visual and all the wow factor, how would I want it to be done?
Yeah.
I have never thought past just walking up behind a microphone and giving it. So then I got my mind really chasing out. I'm a big music guy. So I have all these songs in my head.
We were talking about these songs, yeah.
That I want to come out on.
We were talking about these, yeah.
And
man, that was a year ago. Yeah.
And to me, that's what it's all about. Is I want to be able to do something like that one day. I got the song, but I gotta make sure that it's me.
Yeah.
Because the song that I have in my mind is a perfect song, but the song is not how I deliver my message.
Well, I think too and this is what I've just realized by doing this and building these conferences and being around it, is the flow of emotion that's tied to the song, that's tied to how you start, that's tied to the middle concept, that's tied back to the ending emotion. There has to be a seamless flow. And from someone who's hosting the conference, to make that seamless flow from one speaker to the next is what I've spent 40, 50 hours just on that one piece for this year, because it's so important to bring people on a journey that's consistent, right? And it starts with the song, and it starts with how they're going to end, and who's coming in next, and what the MC says, and man, it gets really granular. Yeah, it's been a lot of time on it.
So man, I know that's the song that I want. I know what the song means to the people that have experienced it. I know what the song means to the singer who sang it. And I want but I have to get my message ready for the song. And it's about ready. But I'm just really refining, because it's really a question of, are you ready now to take your life to the next level? And there's a song out there that the first 3 words of the song are you ready? But it's a heavy song.
Yeah.
It's from Korn.
Yeah.
Right? And it's loud. And I'm a golf coach and I'm subdued. My delivery is soft.
Yeah.
I'm a whisperer, according to many, right? But if I have the opportunity to do it, I'm going to do it. and I'm going to be able to deliver the message that matches the intensity
of the song.
And that's where my head's at.
Yeah.
And that's the fun part, because like, and there's a Netflix documentary on Woodstock '99 and how out of control it got.
Yep.
And on the first night, the headlining act was Korn.
That's when it went all to shit.
Yeah. So
that's when the fire started.
Yeah, so that was day 3. Day 3 was the fires, right? But on the first night, Korn was one of the biggest acts in the world in that end of the heavy metal era, right, of the late '90s, and he had never played in front of 50,000 fans, let alone 350,000 fans. So he kind of had a feeling this was going to be big, and then the song has a build-up that is so heavy and so powerful, and then he walked out on the stage and he saw a sea of people, infinitely bigger than anything he's ever seen before. And then to watch the song move 350,000 people to Bunkersville, right? That's powerful. And he said there's no drug on the planet that can match what it felt like when I walked out there to something way grander than I could have ever imagined, and I murdered it.
Yep, crushed it.
And I'm like, yeah, that was one of the coolest 5-minute sequences of any documentary I've ever seen. Because if you're somebody like yourself and myself who's wanting to impact people, hardly anybody can impact genres more than famous musicians like Taylor Swift on the Cali. I mean, he's just literally on fire. She's killing it.
Yep.
Right? Well, the dream would be to be able to walk out in front of that many people and watch them all sing it back to you. That's when you know you've made an impact.
Yeah.
Right? And every night Taylor Swift is like on stage, like in tears, because she's in front of 100,000 people that are hanging on every single word she's ever done. And
all the unique stories of positive impact around those words or those times. I needed to hear that, or it got me through this, or it exemplified this monumental great moment. And that's what we celebrated to.
For sure. And to me, art is the roadmap to engineered science, right? It's somebody visualized something and created it, and then it gets fine-tooth combed into this refined outcome.
Yep.
But it all starts with the art, which is why artists, perfect example. I try to say it like this. Eddie Vedder, Pearl Jam, had a traumatic, terrible childhood, bullied, made fun of, was lied to by his mom about who his dad really was, and only found out who his dad was on his deathbed.
Wow.
Right? So here's this little guy. He's not very big. He's made fun of. He's humiliated. He's the person that's supposed to love him the most lied to him over something that's so terrible you can't believe it. All of that pain created art that all the people that made fun of him, that were athletes, later used his song to get them hyped up to go to the next level.
Yeah.
So I'm not condoning bullying. I'm not condoning all the pain and all the terrible things that happened to Eddie Vedder, and more happens to everybody.
Yeah.
But we have to understand is that life feeds on life. That pain that brought Eddie down is what created the art that gave him elevated status and a belief that he had purpose in life, which then fed the people that brought him down to go to the highest level because they were inspired by what he did. And it was one big, huge circle that ultimately was the person who was the lowest became the highest and elevated the person that was below to a higher place.
It's magic.
And it's magic. It's like, that's why I'm trying to show people that feel like they're down. All this is a recipe for you to find your purpose. Because when you find your purpose and you deliver it upon the world, even if it only impacts one person, it's impacted the world because of it. And people are like, oh, that's coach talk. It's only coach talk until you've done it.
Well, I was just going to say, I think the most people that would push back on that is someone that hasn't had that experience.
100%. And that's my job, is to encourage. And once again, if I encourage one person to do it, then I've won.
Totally.
And I mean, as soon as I stop trying to be anything more than be present for the person I'm present to, that's all I got.
Well, I mean, I can relate to that just on the conference last year that you were talking about. I remember sitting down at the table and, with my wife and having deep conversation and tears in my eyes, and I owe this person that 10 grand for this, and this fee came in, and this budget number was off, and we're looking at it going, how the hell am I going to do this?
Yeah.
Right. And I think the biggest thing for me in that moment was realizing that this is just part of it. And like, what happens next is the breakthrough. What happens next is the part that I've all been waiting for. But I had to go through this to understand it and understand those mistakes to then go help other people throw events. Right. So like, and then I pick up a client after my event and I help him throw an event, and he's going through the same stuff, and we stopped that from happening. We stopped those issues from happening because I've experienced it. So did I want to consult people on other events? Did I think that was going to be an opportunity? I really didn't. Really just my consultation for small and medium businesses, right? Yeah. But I had all these clients come through for that, and I just went through things that they were facing, and I could help them with it. But if I pulled out on that and didn't get through to the other side, man, I wouldn't have impacted you to start thinking about what song and how to, and the visuals and stuff like that,
That's
right. And the 300 other people that were in the room that, man, I'm still getting some text messages of like, I just closed this deal and we finally did this partnership. And I'm like, man, this is the impact, right? Mm-hmm. And man, I could only think about if I didn't do that. And if I pulled back, or if I was too scared, or said, hey, I'm going to figure this out when I didn't have the solution. Dude, I didn't have the money. I didn't have the solution. But it somehow worked. And it worked because the cause. It worked because I said, you know what? This is bigger than me. And I'm just the conduit here. It's not about Jim. I'm the conduit, and how do I make this happen? And how do I leverage some of those resources? And I mean, magic happens. Things that a phone call, someone paid me $15,000. I didn't even know the person. Wow. A phone call that comes through and helps me financially. Where did that come from, right? That's the guy in the gray suit with the blue tie right there.
That's exactly right.
And it's just those moments of, hey, we can get through this, and how do I use this? And I can use this, so let me package and bottle this experience so I can help others with it.
Without doubt. Yeah, man, no doubt.
Man, what a good conversation today, bro.
Well, I mean, once again, you get me in a situation where I'm with like-minded people who are trying to encourage each other so that we can encourage others, so that we can uplift a society, which is everybody's society, that's really struggling, man. And I think what's happened, in my opinion, is that we've been in search of happiness without struggle. Because most people don't want to feel pain. Well, obviously not, obviously. Yeah. But it takes that to actually have accomplishment.
It does.
To have gain, there has to be some struggle. And if you're not telling yourself the truth that the preparation needs to be more difficult than the event to make the event easy. It's John Woodenism, right? So John Wooden's basketball practices were way more difficult than the game, so that the guys could just be free when they stepped on the court. Yeah. But most people...
Man, I ain't breathing as hard this whole game as I was in practice on Thursday.
This is a breeze.
Yeah.
Right? So
you're in, overtime, and you're saying that, right?
Yeah, and so I'm trying to get people to live their life in a way that you have to be the bison. You have to walk into the storm. You have to walk into what life has shown you, that the pain. Because on the other side of that pain is your purpose. But if you're going to run from it because it hurts, and I get it, and I've lived plenty of it, all you've done is prolong the agony. And oftentimes that agony is doing push-ups, getting stronger.
Yep.
And so As soon as
And then it turns to regret.
so like my job
And
is
then
to
it
like,
starts compounding. And then it's all.
and
Yeah.
I'm a storyteller, right? Because I'm a coach. So if I can tell a story of either struggle that I've watched, struggle that I've personally endured, or struggle that I've read about, any time that I can share a story that is comparable to the one that I'm just listened to give them hope that somebody that I'm sure that they've heard of has faced this exact same crisis.
Yep.
And here's how they did it. And if you don't believe me, here's the book.
Yeah.
Or here's the link to a YouTube thing, or the documentary on Michael Jordan, Last Dance, episode 7. Boom, does this. You're like, oh wow, thanks, because that gave me hope. And there's just not a lot of hope out there because there haven't been a lot of people willing to pronounce the struggle that it took to get them. They just want to show the highlight reel.
Totally.
The highlight reel sells and makes money, but the truth is not in this. The highlight reel. The truth is the journey.
I was just going to say. Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth.
So I mean, that's what it's all about, and that's what I've always enjoyed in my time of knowing you, is that sometimes we finish each other's sentences. So it's just how it is, man.
But I think that's that level of alignment, right?
Yeah.
And it's the things of, we've had conversations of 100% vulnerability,
Yeah.
right? And I don't think this platform is the right time to have those right now. But like, we've had 100% vulnerability and struggles and what we're going through and challenges, and I think that at that level of vulnerability, one, it deepens the human connection.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what I always talk about. If you don't want to go 100% vulnerable, give it 30%, because that will deepen connection. If you give it the 5 or 10, it's a risk. You may not get deep with someone. But by doing that and understanding that, man, I've learned from you, right? And I think that's a part of it, is you hear the stories and the relationships that you have with others. We are coaching each other. Yeah. We are sharing, and we're doing it because we care, right? There's compassion behind it. And I think that's the difference with surface level relationships and deeper relationships. And I think that's the challenge that most people have, and that level of loneliness and that level of comparison. That's what I think is killing so many people today is, well, one of my consulting clients, well, this guy's doing this in Arizona. And I'm like, who cares?
Yeah.
Like, develop a relationship with them and share ideas and ideate and create together. But like, who cares that he's doing that and making that? And I think that's the hardest thing, is like, run your own race on your own pace, man.
Yeah.
And it's hard to do that.
Yeah. So I mean, I would think that this is really important to think about, which is when you're going through anything, right? You're trying to figure out, why am I going through it? What is it trying to teach me? And am I prepared to learn it? If you can do those things and experience it, that's powerful. But here's the difference. Like, men, this is important for your vulnerability speech here. It's like, men generally aren't vulnerable.
Yep.
Right? So there's way less human connection between men to men than women to women. And how do we know this? And Jordan Peterson does a great job of saying this. It's just like, when the husband dies first, the wife continues on because she's got a gigantic community, because they're emotional, they share, they're way more vulnerable than men. When the wife dies first, the guy either goes into depression or dies immediately after, because his purpose has been taken away, because he's not vulnerable, he's never shared.
Yeah.
So the encouragement that I'm trying to show is, like, my life has grotesquely exploded by being vulnerable and sharing outrageous pain that I would have never done 10 years prior. But the pain got so bad and so really unbelievable that I couldn't even hold it in any longer. And that was what God was trying to show me.
Yeah.
He's like, you can't do this on your own, man. And when you're a hard driving entrepreneurial machine, you only think about, it's got to be me.
Yep.
I can't rely on anybody else. But relying on somebody else is interesting if you how you view it. If you rely on a team of people to help guide you, that's a community. If you're relying on somebody to get you there, that's a transaction.
Yep.
And so
Ooh, man, that's powerful. That is powerful.
Yeah, so like my job is to get out of the transaction and into the community.
Yeah.
And that's not easy because it's scary because sometimes some guys aren't ready to meet you there. Right? And that's a little too much, coach, and they pull away and it's like that's not my fault nor my loss. I gave an opportunity and it was not what that person wanted. I would have taken that personal 10 years ago. Now it's like he wasn't ready.
Yeah, and I think that's time of understanding ourselves inward first.
Yeah,
right? We weren't ready for a lot of things.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I wasn't ready to make a massive transition in my life, and I lost some opportunities and I diminished some relationships in that.
Yeah.
I'm aware of that, right? And I don't regret that because if I had those opportunities, I would have fucked them up later on at higher stakes.
Yeah.
Right? So I can't beat myself up, but I'm damn sure aware of it. I'm damn sure, that person was trying to help me and was speaking good into me. And I was, being a little bastard about it and thought that they were a jerk. And lo and behold, I know exactly why they were doing it. And I am grateful for it. Mm-hmm. But that relationship has sailed. And that conversation has diminished. But I think we need to realize those moments inward to be able to see them and recognize them. It's like, man, once I experience something, back to what we were talking about, once I experience it, it's like the lens changes of clarity around it.
Yeah, 100%.
And like even now, just with speaking and stuff, I've been so nervous on so many stages and I've done so many of this that I can identify another speaker. And hopefully one day I'm that person that puts a hand on someone and gives them some guidance, But I can just see that because I've experienced it. I'm like, oh, that person's, foot tapping. I used to foot tap when I was on stage, and that's a sign of being nervous.
Yeah.
But understanding that can allow us to help those people and maybe communicate differently or be more agile in the communication so they can receive that opportunity. Yeah. But to your point, man, if it doesn't align, it doesn't align. And I think that's the greatest power of where you're at mentally, where I believe I'm trending mentally is that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Just remember that nervousness creates a higher frequency in your body because it amplifies your energy and you can do greater things with it than without it.
With nervousness.
Yeah, so you have to harness it. You have to be able to harness the energy because the vibration, your body's vibration has amplified due to the situation.
Yeah.
Well, that amplification is amplification of power and speed and thought if you view it as an excitement, not an anxiety, right? So just know that, well, like we said, pressure is a privilege. This energy, this nervousness is a perceived possibility of execution.
Yep.
Embrace it and use the energy to succeed instead of let the energy create anxiety, which causes you to choke, which then causes you to fail.
Yep.
So that's really the roadmap.
Man, you put me back at the conference last year mentally right now. I'm like, I was the most calm on any large event I've ever done. Like anything, like sports, games, anything. And I think it was just because of the preparation.
Yeah.
It was like, what's going to happen at this point is going to happen. I have no control. And, how do I show up and use this and pull energy from it? Yeah. Especially since I was sick that day. I wasn't feeling well.
Yeah, and on top of that, you had to go, your storm occurred very close to the event.
Yeah.
So the reason why you were at the most calm is because you had just gotten out of the hurricane.
Yep.
And
it's a great way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, if you'd faced the hurricane months before, there probably would have been a lot more perceived pressure because of how much, all the hard work had gone pretty seamless, and you could take the mindset of, okay, what's going to happen when you come out of the storm? You're like, whatever happens can't be anything like what I just went through.
Well, I think too is in that moment, what I realized was, losing a child a couple months before that
Yeah.
was, this doesn't matter. Like the worst that's going to happen is someone is going to say that, this wasn't what they thought they paid for. And we didn't have one person say that, right? So it was like, that was the only worry of, I wanted to serve the attendees, and I believe we did. But to go into that, I think that had a big play on it too, of like, well, Jim, where's the pressure right now? The pressure is good for this experience in this conference, and you're getting pressure in your personal life that's not good. Like, well, let's focus on this. And what happens here, I did all the hard work, I prepped, I put in the reps, and it ended up working out,
Yeah, man.
So
It always works out. We just don't know. It always works out the way it's supposed to work out. It's just sometimes it didn't match what we envisioned.
I think it's the timing too, right? We anticipate, I remember last year it was like, all right, I'm going to do this conference and my consulting business is going to blow up overnight. Dude, 2 months later, I picked up like 9 clients. That 2 months was not in the timing that I wanted, but I was like, you know what? This is good momentum.
Yep.
People are seeing me. I'm still showing up. We're still doing this. We've got this event. We've got this mastermind. And then boom, boom, boom. And it's almost like, well, what did I learn? Jim, you got to be patient, man, because patience is the number one thing that I am bad at. And that's been a journey the last 5 years of just, okay, it didn't happen when you wanted it to. Be patient. What can you learn? What can you use with the time you have now in order to make that happen, in order to enhance that when it does happen?
That's right. Be present, man.
Yeah. Well, thanks, brother. I appreciate you being here today,
thanks for having
man.
me,
Always a great conversation. Search your podcast anywhere. Virgil Herring's in the house. And thank you so much.
My pleasure, buddy.
Cool.